Today on In the Woodyard, we're going to talk about the 10 top things that you need to ask when you're going to buy firewood. The questions that matter and the answers you should be looking for. Here we go. Number one, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, what are you going to be using it for? Are you going to be using it in a wood boiler and you want big chunks? Are you going to be using it in a fireplace and you want pieces that are small enough that anybody in the house could handle it and put wood into the fire? Are you heating with it and you want a variety of sizes, like say in a wood stove? Are you going to be taking it somewhere and you're going to be hauling it? We need to know, how big are the chunks? So there's a lot of questions you need to ask yourself first. What are you going to do with the wood? And then the questions you need to ask to the wood seller. So one of the real important questions to ask in this situation is, ask yourself, how many fires are you going to have? Are you going to have just a couple fires? Well, then you don't need to buy very much wood. You can get a couple bundles. But if you're going to have several fires in the summertime or several fires in the wintertime, if you're going to have it in a fireplace, you're going to need to know about what the average person burns in a year. Now, my customers that I sell to, I have about 300 regular customers I sell wood to. The average is 2 face cords or 2/3 of a cord. That's average. Some people buy 1 face cord and they think they got all the wood in the world. That's plenty. That's all they're ever going to need. Then there's other people that will buy, say, 3 full cords. So it's 9 face cords, sometimes 12. And they want more because they heat with it. So where are you at? How much are you going to use up? Will you use it in the fireplace and will you use it in the backyard fire pit or take when you go camping? So kind of think about how much you think you're going to use. Like I said, the average person that I sell to buys about 2 to 3 face cords. So about a full cord or less is kind of average. But I sell to a lot of people that burn in the fireplace, they burn in a fire pit, and they take it when they go camping. Those are kind of my 3 main customers that I sell to. And some of those people, they only burn in one of those situations. Then there are other people that heat with wood that I sell to, and they have a wood stove, and they go through 10, 12, 14 face cords, or which would equal 4 full cords or more. So you got to kind of know where you're at. But like I said, the average person, if you start out buying 1 face cord or 1/3 of a cord, which is a roll of wood stacked that is 16 inches long, 8 feet wide, 4 feet high. So if you take a sheet of plywood, tip it over on its side, 8 feet wide, 4 feet high, stacked, solid, 16-inch pieces. That's a face cord or 1/3 of a cord. 3 of those stacked side by side by side is 4 feet wide, 4 feet high, 8 feet long. That's a full cord. 128 cubic feet. So there you go. Those are the quantities, what you need to know. Also, you need to find out, in your area, if you're new to there especially, if you're heating with the wood, how long is the cold season? Is it 2 months long like it is in the southern parts of the United States? Or if you're in the northern part of the United States or in Canada, you have 6 months of heating season is what we like to call it. So basically you're heating in your house, you're heating September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Okay, 7 months. Or 6 or 7 months. You're going to be heating for a long time. So you're going to go through a lot more wood. Obviously, in the beginning of the season and the end of the season, you're going to burn less because it's not as cold. But in the peak of the season, you're going to burn a lot. Now, if you're in a warmer climate where it doesn't get super cold, you're only going to need to burn maybe for 2 months. So you might need a lot less wood. It just depends on your size of your house, how well it's insulated, how efficient your stove is, all of those things. So that's all stuff to consider. But if you're buying it for yourself for a fireplace and you have a fire once a week and you're going to be burning, say, 3 or 4 months of the year, usually a face cord, which is 1/3 of a cord, or 2 face cords or 2/3 of a cord is probably about all you're going to need. A full cord would be probably more than you need, but that's a good thing to have extra wood. It doesn't go bad as long as you keep it dry. It'll last quite a while. Number 2. What species is available in your area of trees for firewood? Now, a lot of people think, oh, this kind of wood is the best because it's what I like, it's what I burn. Well, it doesn't mean it's the best. There's a lot of different kinds of trees around the world that are different qualities of wood as far as how much heat it puts out or how fast it burns. There's a thing called BTUs, which is British thermal units. That's a measurement for how much heat wood will put off. Some of the better woods, higher on the scale, are woods like almond wood, pecan, Osage orange, things like that. The very, very dense, very heavy wood. They put off the most BTUs. 32, 33, 34 million BTUs. Those woods will put off. Now, on the farther end, down low, is going to be some of your soft woods, which is balsam, white pine, ponderosa pine, stuff like that, where it's going to be in the low end. And that's going to be in the teens, like mid to upper teens of BTUs. And so it will burn faster if it's lighter and puts out less BTUs, and it won't put out as much heat. So that's something to think about. Now your average woods, which a lot of people think are their best wood, which is actually average wood, are woods like maple, cherry, woods like oak. They're good wood. There's nothing wrong with any of that. They're all great wood. But there are wood types that are a lot better, and there's wood types that are a lot less as far as heat. Now, if you're just having a fire for enjoyment, all wood burns. That's something to keep in mind. It doesn't matter. Now, there are also people that heat their houses. For instance, I have a brother. He heated his whole house one year with red pine. That was it. He has an outdoor boiler, and that's all he had that one year. He burned all red pine, and it worked just fine, because pine is fine. And especially if you're having outdoor fires, the benefits you're going to have with pine is you're going to have, it's easy to start, it burns easy, it puts off great flame, it smells great, it sounds good. You have that snapping and the crackling of the fire, whereas if you put in wood like locust, which is great heating wood, or oak or hickory or Osage orange, something like that, those woods are going to burn much slower and not be as much fun because they don't have a lot of flame, they don't just take off. There's no explosions, no fun basically, but they're good for heating. So that's something to think about. Now in certain parts of the country, a lot of people think hardwood is the only way to go. Yeah, if you're in the eastern part of the United States or even the central part of the United States, hardwoods are great and there's lots of it. Like I mentioned before, you've got woods like hickory and oak, you've got maple, you've got birch, you've got cherry, you've got a lot of really good options available to you. Now, a big part of the United States, actually a big part of the world, all they have is softwoods. In Alaska, they burn spruce. You know what they have in Alaska? Spruce. And you know what? Their houses don't explode. It works just fine. Pine is fine. Although spruce is not actually a pine, it is an evergreen. So if you have to burn what's in your area, because that's what you've got, that's what you have to burn. And you can always bring wood in, but that's generally sometimes something you got to look out for because you have to pay to bring it in. That's number one. Number two, it might not be legal to bring it across state borders depending on what your laws are in your area. So you burn what you have in your area. There's a lot of really good wood out there. Don't think that the only kind of wood that you can burn is oak, because that's all you've ever heard your whole life. Oak's good wood, but there's a lot of other wood too. And like I said before about Alaska, they have spruce, they have some birch too, and a few other things, but mainly a lot of spruce. In a lot of Canada, they have spruce, birch, and maple. And that's pretty much it. They don't have hardly anything else in a lot of the areas. In the western part of the United States, especially the Southwest, they have two kinds of pine. They have pinyon pine and ponderosa pine. That's what they have, that's what they burn. So you burn what you have. And so for those of you that think, well, you can't burn pine, no, you can burn it. The number one thing, just like any wood, you'll want it to be dry, fully seasoned and dry. So the next thing you want to ask is, what size are the chunks of wood? Are they big, huge, monstrous pieces, or are they small, little bitty pieces, or are they somewhere in between? Generally, most of the people that I sell to want pieces they can pick up with one hand, because everyone in the house a lot of times, especially for a fireplace, has to be able to put a piece of wood in there. And if you've got a piece that it's going to take 3 men and a keg of beer just to get the chunk of wood into the fire, it's too big. And a lot of the people I sell to, it's the lady of the house that manages the fire, and they don't want big, huge pieces, or if one of the kids are going to help out. You don't want big, huge, monstrous pieces. Generally, my rule of thumb is, if you can pick it up with one hand, it's perfect. Anything bigger than that for a fireplace is bigger than it needs to be. The other benefit you get by having smaller pieces, you get more flame because the fire can actually breathe better. One big, huge, massive chunk is not going to burn very well, and you're not going to get much for flames. But in a boiler, where you want heat, you want it to last all night long, a big chunk is great. So there's that. And again, on the sizes, you know, I mentioned hand piece sizes. You want to be able to pick them up with one hand if it's for a fireplace. The other thing you want to ask when you're buying wood is, what length are the pieces? Standard is 16 inches. That is standard. A foot and 4 inches, 16 inches. In other parts of the world, they go by centimeters. Ours are in inches. 16 inches is standard. Some people want smaller pieces. They want 12-inch pieces. And I know a lot of Europe and I think a lot of Australia, they have like, it goes by centimeters again, but they're smaller pieces, you know, 10, 12 inches is kind of standard for them. But in your area, in my area, probably going to be 16 inches is standard. There are some people that want bigger pieces. They want 18 or 24 or whatever, and that's fine if you're putting it into a boiler or burning it in a fire pit, then it doesn't matter. The problem becomes is that when you get bigger pieces, it's hard to measure the quantity of the wood if the person isn't consistent. So 16 inches is just an easy way to know. So that's the standard size. The next question you want to ask is, how old is the wood? How long has it been since it was cut, split, stacked to dry. Generally, most wood is going to take about 6 months to a year if it's split small enough. If it's a big chunk, it could take a year or two, especially if it's hickory or oak or Osage orange, one of the more dense woods that takes longer to dry. Also, it depends on what area you're in. If you're in the southern United States where there's a lot of moisture all the time, or if you're on the west coast, say over in Washington State, you're going to have much wetter drying conditions, whereas if you're in Texas, you might be able to take the same wood and dry it 3 times as fast. Also, splitting it smaller helps it dry fast. So you're going to want to find out, how long has it been dried? How long has it been seasoned? How dry is it? Those are kind of all the same questions, but those are important questions. So like I mentioned, some wood takes longer to dry, which is the oak, locust, Osage orange, hickory, the more dense woods. They're going to take longer to dry because it's a tighter grained, more dense wood. And your other woods that dry very fast are going to be things like white pine, soft maple, aspen. Those kind of woods generally dry very fast, 3 months to 6 months in the summertime. If you've got them in a good area where the sun and wind can hit it, it's going to dry faster. So that's all stuff to consider when you're buying wood or when you're asking the wood supplier. Those questions are good to know. The next question you're going to want to ask, and this is true whether it's wood that you're doing for yourself or if you're buying it, is the wood stacked in a pile off the ground? Is it on pallets? Is it on rock? Is it on runners so it keeps the wood actually from contacting the ground? Because wood will wick moisture up through the wood and it will suck off in that bottom layer, it'll suck water into the wood. So you don't want that. You want it to be dry. You want it to be able to breathe. In order for wood to dry, it needs to get airflow and some sun and some warmth. That's all very important. Number 6, is the wood covered? Which means, is it stored in a shed? Is there a tarp over the top of it or tins over the top of it to keep water off of it? Now, you don't have to do this, but I find that when I first cut wood, especially if it's green wood, I will leave it so the sun and wind, and yes, rain can hit it because the rain is just surface water, it will run off. Let the sun do its thing, let the wind do its thing. But once I get towards fall, when it's closer to selling the wood and it's getting close to dry, I make sure it's good and dried out from the sun being on it for a week without any rain, and I cover just the top so that I can keep the water and the snow off of it so it stays dry through the winter. And so the wind can flow through it and it can dry additionally. Now, there's a big wise tale. People think, oh, wood doesn't dry in the wintertime. Yes, it does. It dries. It dries. It does. It doesn't dry as fast, but it does dry. You have less daylight, so you have less sun on it. You do have wind, but so you got that. Colder conditions are not as good for drying, but you're still going to have it be dry because the air generally in wintertime, at least in the Midwest, it's fairly dry air. So it does dry, just not as fast, but it will dry. Number 7, and this is a big one. I get a lot of customers from this particular question. Is the wood hand stacked and hand loaded when they deliver it? Or is it loaded with a skid steer bucket or a tractor bucket? Because if they're loading it with a bucket, most of the time, they're going to be scraping up dirt, bark, branches, rocks, other debris, whatever's on the ground is going to come with your wood. I had one particular customer that I now have said the last time he bought wood from another guy, which was a couple years ago, he bought one face cord, which is a pickup truck full, which is a third of a cord. He said when they dumped it, he got 2 wheelbarrows heaping full of dirt, debris, rocks, bark, branches. So he paid for that, and he said, it was horrible. He said the wood was real dirty because they loaded it with a skid loader with a bucket. So hand loading is going to be your cleanest. Now, there's ways to have it be clean if the process of the wood seller is to load it into a tumbler where they're going to disc it, or a tumbler that will tumble all the debris out and then go into the trailer. Now that's fine because they're cleaning it before they're getting it to you. But if they're just scooping it and delivering it to you, you're going to get a load of crap. It's that simple. Number 8, this is a question you might want to ask. Do they sell kindling? A lot of people don't realize that to start a fire, kindling is a good thing to have. You can start a fire without kindling, which is little bitty pieces the size of your finger or smaller, but it's much easier if they sell kindling or if some is included with it. So kindling is a good thing to have. My way of starting a fire, I never use a fire starter because I don't need to. If you know how to build a fire, you really shouldn't need fire starters, in my opinion, if you know what you're doing. Because you start with some paper, then some kindling, then some bigger chunks, then some kindling, then some more paper to create your draft. I actually make a sandwich. So you're getting stuff burning top and bottom. It goes really good. Some people like the reverse, where they put the big stuff on the bottom, then the kindling, and then your paper or your ignition source material up on top, whether it's cardboard or whatever, to create your draft. I like it. I like all of it. And you got to create a draft to get the airflow going so it'll burn. So kindling is a good thing because the kindling is easier to get started than a big chunk. Number 9, when you buy wood, ask them if they stack the wood. If you're incapable of stacking it, don't have time to stack it, physically you're not able, don't want to, ask them if they'll stack it. I do stack wood for people. I charge a fee. It depends on how far I have to carry the wood or how close I can get to the pile. If I can back right up to it, stack it right off the truck into their rack, it's not that expensive, and it saves them the hassle of having to do it. So you might want to ask if they'll do it. Now, if I have to go to someone's backyard where I can't even drive around, I have to wheelbarrow it, they're gonna pay a lot more. And it depends on your area, you know, what they charge, but that's something to ask about if they'll do that. Number 9, do they deliver? Because delivery is nice for most people. Most people don't have a truck where they can just throw wood into it and haul it. A lot of people do, but most don't. Most of my customers have a minivan and a small car. The reason they're buying wood from me is because they don't have a truck, they don't have a chainsaw, they don't have a splitter, they don't have woods to go cut wood. They're buying it because they're paying me for my service to provide them with wood. So ask them if they'll deliver. Most people will. You might have to pay an additional fee depending on how far you are. I build my first 10 miles right into my delivery fee, but if other people don't, that's fine too, however they want to do it. If I have to go farther, I do charge more, but so you can get wood delivered. So that's something to ask about. Number 10, how much is a face cord or a third of a cord? They're both the same measurement. Like I said before, it is a row, 8 feet wide, 4 feet high, stacked, 16-inch pieces. That's either a face cord or a third of a cord. Depending on where you are, you can pay a lot or you can pay a little. Now, the rule of thumb is, if you live in an area with a lot of trees and very few people, wood's gonna be cheap. If you live in an area with a lot of people, with few or no trees, big city, you're gonna pay a lot because that's just how it works. So in my area, I've got quite a few people around here, but not too far from here, there's a lot of woods. So I'm kind of a middle-sized market. Now, on the low end, I have seen face cords or thirds of a cord of wood, that's the 8 feet by 4 feet stack, go for as little as $50. But I've also seen them go for as high as $200, and even $250, not in my area, but a ways from here. Now, the area I am in, average price for a face cord of wood, or third of a cord, is anywhere from $90 to about $130, $140, right in there for a face cord. A full cord is gonna go from anywhere from $280 to $400, somewhere in there, depending on the kind of wood, and if it's delivered, and that kind of stuff. But if I go over to the west of me, I can get a face cord of wood, or a third of a cord, for $50 or $60, and it's good wood. Because there's very few people, lots of trees, lots of dead trees actually. But if I go south of me to the city, down to Chicago, which is about 3 hours away, a full cord of wood, right now the going rate is around $700 to $800 for a full cord. So, lots of people, very few trees. Where you are matters a lot. So, that's something to consider. I've got a bonus one. So this is a number 11. Number 11. Find out how long they've been selling wood. If someone says, oh, I just have some extra wood I'm trying to get rid of, you might get some junk. If someone says, oh, I sell a little bit, I've only been selling for a little bit, I've got some wood I cut this summer and I'm selling it now this fall, it might not even be dry yet, that might not be your best source. You're gonna wanna find someone that sells a fair amount of wood, doesn't have to be a full-time seller, but someone that sells enough wood that they've been doing it a while, that they know their kinds of wood, they know what they have as far as the quality, how dry it is. And you're gonna wanna ask them, do you have a moisture meter? Have you tested it? And if the answer is no, that means probably not gonna be very good wood. I test all my wood before I sell it. A moisture meter is a device about this big that has prongs. You stick it into the wood and it tells you the moisture content of the wood. You generally wanna be in the teens of percentage of moisture. Anywhere between 12 and 19% is good. 15 is really good wood. 15, 14, 16, right in there is really good wood. 20 and above, once you get to about 23, 24, it's gonna have quite a bit of moisture in it. It'll burn, but it won't burn really good. It'll sizzle a little bit. It'll still burn, but you're boiling water off that's inside of the wood. Once you get into high 20s or even 30s, wood's pretty wet. I've seen wood, when you fresh cut it, when it's green, cut fresh trees, cut from living trees, it's gonna be in the 40s, even 50s, percent-wise. Like woods that are very wet are like cottonwood. Water actually runs out of them when you cut them open. Maples like that too sometimes. So that's one of the things you got to think about is how dry is the wood and how long have they been doing it. Now, if you get a guy like me that has been cutting wood my whole life, since I was a kid, but I've only been selling it now for about 10 years, I kind of know what good wood is, and I can give all this information to people when they call and give them advice, and I can ask the questions ahead of time. I usually ask my people, what are you looking for? What are you going to do with it? What kind have you bought in the past? Is this your first time? Is it going in a fireplace? Is it going in a fire pit? Is it going in a boiler? What size do you generally get? What type of wood do you like best? What have you burned in the past? So I can guide people to where they're going to get the best wood possible. So that's something that you guys can take and use yourself to ask the right questions. That's it for today, folks. Poke the buttons. I'll be back tomorrow, 5:30 a.m. with a video for you. Between now and then, you're going to go to my channel. There's 950 more videos for you to watch. They're waiting right now. Go. Good night, Irene.